I own a 2008 Nissan Altima. A couple years ago I started having this problem where the auxiliary input jack stopped working. If you wiggle it around, sometimes it would work, but most of the time the sound quality was horrible and it would either just come out one side or the other side. It just didn't work right. I left it like that for a while, and eventually I decided to take the thing apart and see if I could fix it. And I did. I figured out how to fix the jack, and I put a blog post on my website about it, which you can find here. And then it turned out that blog post became one of the most popular posts on my site. A bunch of other people have used that information to fix their own cars. And I've since discovered that Nissan generally wants you to pay $300 or $400 to replace the entire unit. They won't just fix the little jack. So today I decided to make a video to show you how you can fix your own jack. You can replace the jack, make it work as good as new, and save yourself a few $100s. So let's get started. First things first, let's pop the hood. And then reach under and grab this little lever. That'll unlock the hood so you can lift it up. Now grab the stand, raise it up, set it in the hole, and it'll hold the hood up for you. Next we're going to disconnect the battery. Use a 10mm socket wrench to loosen up this nut, and then set the connector aside. That'll make it so you can't short out the system by accident. Next we need to remove this vent cover. Start by sticking an old credit card or gift card into this spot, and then use a flat screwdriver to pry it away. You'll need to do this on the left and right side, and then it should slide right out. You can either disconnect it and set it aside, or try to balance it on top of your dashboard like I did. Now we need to remove this bottom cover. It's a little difficult to see here, but it's right here, and this is the line where it connects to the front panel. So just use the same method. Stick the credit card in, use the flat screwdriver, and it should pop right off. This one comes off a little bit easier. Now just set it aside and save it for later. Now we need to remove the 4 screws that hold the stereo in place. There's 1, there's 2, and you can just barely see number 3 and 4 down there. So go ahead and unscrew all 4 of those screws. Now set a towel or something soft over your shifter. This will protect it from getting scratched when you pull out the stereo. Now grab hold of the stereo and give it a good pull. It should come right out. Keep in mind you're going to have 4 connectors attached to the back still, so you won't be able to just set it aside. These are what the connectors look like. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, and number 4 down there. So use a little muscle and pull those plugs out. Once they're all disconnected, you can set the radio aside. Here's what the plugs look like for future reference. Now we have to remove the 4 faceplate screws. There's 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. So go ahead and remove these 2. Once you've removed those 4 screws, we need to remove the 4 Torx screws. This is number 1 and number 2. Keep in mind there are 2 more just like it on the other side of the stereo. Now we need to pry up these little clips. This will allow us to remove the front faceplate. There are 2 on either side. Once they're pried up, the front should come right off. You can see the circuit board connects with these 2 connectors, so it just pulls right off. And here's the culprit. These are the solder points for the auxiliary jack. Next we need to remove the circuit board from the front faceplate. We do that by removing all of these little screws. So go ahead and unscrew those and set them aside somewhere where you won't lose them. And then the circuit board should come right off. And here's what the front of the circuit board looks like. And there's the auxiliary jack. Here's what the new one looks like next to the old one. You can see the part is completely identical. Next we're going to use a desoldering braid to remove the auxiliary jack. Start by resting the braid on one of the solder joints. Then sandwich it between the solder joint and your soldering iron. Once it heats up, the wick should absorb all of the solder. A completed one should look like this. Then you just need to do it 6 more times. Now you should be able to just pull the jack right off the board. Here's what it looks like. You can see these 2 edges got melted when I removed it. If you absolutely need to, you can pull this jack apart with these little clips. just use a small flat screwdriver and some pliers to pull it apart. These little metal pieces come right out. For me, this was the culprit. I had to bend this back in place through trial and error and set it back in the jack and see what worked and what didn't. I recommend you just replace the part completely. Now we can pop the new jack back in place, and the little clip should clip it right on there. Make sure you don't melt these little tabs. Now we just need to solder everything in place. Hold your iron against the part and the solder pad and then apply some solder to the pad. This process goes much quicker than desoldering. When you're done, it should look something like this. Now make sure your button membrane's aligned and then set it inside the faceplate. Make sure the buttons feel right. Then you got to reattach all those little screws you took out earlier. Now the faceplate should snap right back onto the main unit. You might need to give it a little muscle. Then we attach the 4 screws from the side that held the faceplate on. And don't forget the 4 Torx screws. Finally, we get to reattach the stereo. Make sure you plug all 4 plugs back in. Then push the stereo back into your dash. It should slide in with a satisfying click. Screw it back in place, then snap the bottom plastic cover back in. Then finally you can slide the vent cover back in place. Let's give it a test. First, I used a miter saw to cut a tube. Sounds good to me. Let's see if the volume controls work. Everything seems to be working like it should. 3/8 inch deep groove down the length of the 2x2. So that's all there really is to it. I mean, you can do it in under 2 hours if you've got all the tools. And they're all basic tools, so they're pretty easy to get a hold of locally. If you need to get a hold of the auxiliary input jack part, check out my website. And there's a link there for you to go order it. Good luck, and I hope you're able to save yourself some money.